Our next speakers is Todd Swanson and Michael Smith from the Getty. Todd Swanson is currently the head of digital imaging at the Getty Trust. The head of Getty Digital Imaging provides vision and guidance across the Getty organization, facilitating a sustainable strategic digitization program consisting of 3 imaging studios led by a manager at each location and a staff of 25 imaging professionals. Todd has spent the last 15 years working in cultural heritage, supporting archives, libraries, and museum communities in nonprofit and corporate environments. Todd is particularly interested in finding innovative and meaningful ways to leverage imaging technologies to help tell stories, inform scholarly and scientific research, and provide open access to information for broad general audiences. Michael Smith is Digital Imaging Manager at the Getty Trust, manages the imaging studios at the Getty Museum. Michael has been at the Getty Museum for over 20 years and has 30 more years of imaging, has more than 30 years of imaging experience. Michael works closely with the Getty photographers and imaging technicians, providing technical support and developing imaging standards as they work with new developing technologies. During the recent pandemic, the imaging team worked on projects cleaning up the imaging database of the collections, increasing the images of the collections online, and making more files available for download through Getty's open content program. Michael is currently working on ways to use the studio spaces more efficiently as the department works more with conservative scientists on new technologies. Todd and Michael, thank you so much for agreeing to present today. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and give it over to you guys. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Pete. I guess I'm still seeing your screen. I'm imagining I'm up at this point. Mike, I see you in a little square. I'm going to share my screen. And I guess we can get started. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Cool. Here we go. Present. Again. Okay, cool. Well, again, thanks for the introduction, Peter. I think Mike and I are both really excited to present at the roundtable. It's always a great opportunity to kind of share the work that we do. The introductions, I think, were pretty sufficient, but that's my first slide too. So I think we can skip through this one pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm Todd Swanson, head of Getty Digital Imaging, and this is Michael Smith. He's the Digital Imaging Manager for the museum studios. And together we're going to be presenting about kind of the adjustments and impact that COVID had kind of to our work. And this is a bit of a follow-up from a presentation that was given on the onset of the pandemic, where we were just kind of starting to experience what this impact was, and continually plan for and try to adjust to all these rapidly moving changes. And this is 18 months later. I don't think we're in a position where we're offering anyone solutions. We're simply kind of reporting the things that we've been working on. I really want to kind of try to embrace the spirit of a roundtable, even though we're all in distant places right now. But this will be mostly a conversation with Mike and I, with all of you. And we really encourage any questions or chats or the breakout room. We will really want to utilize, because I think we're excited to hear from all of you too about your experiences, what you found has worked well, and things that haven't, and we will share kind of our version of that. I think together as a community we can do a lot, and I'd really hope if we could walk away with something where we identify areas that we want to further develop or refine, or things we can work on together, again, as a community, as it impacts the work that we do in the environment that we're working in, which is this global pandemic environment. And I guess that's my intro. Mike, did you want to chip in on any of that before we jump in?
No, sure. I totally agree with what Todd is saying. I agree that this is a conversation that me and Todd have been having, and one that we want to have with the whole community. We want to talk about how we adjusted to the environment created by COVID, and what we learned from that, and how we're moving forward. I think that's what this is really about, is what did we learn and how are we going to move forward? What are we going to gain from the things we learned? and how can we use those experiences to do what we do better. So I think that's basically what we're going to be talking about today.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. So if I know we have staff on the call, so don't kill me for pulling your images off of our directory, our internal directory. I promise better headshots in the future. But we wanted to put this slide out there to not only show kind of the staff that support all of the work that we do at the Digital Imaging Department, but also to kind of call attention to when we talk about the impact of COVID to our work. It's not necessarily, how do we make images or how do we support, work from home environment. It really is, how do we support our people? How do we care for the team as a whole and the individuals represented on this slide, right? We have a lot of different people. The pandemic was a very tumultuous time. And I think we were very fortunate at Getty to have the support that we did. But even though we had that support, everyone still has personal lives, family lives to deal with. And everyone, I can guarantee you on this screen and probably on this call, faced difficult challenges through this period. I've always thought of myself, at least I've thought of myself as a more people first manager than a process first manager or leader. And I think one thing that I learned, during this time was just seeing this extra level of humanity with the team. Again, everyone was dealing with very difficult situations. There were some great things that happened along the way. I had a baby in the pandemic, or my wife and I did. And so there's these glimmers of hope, but then there's also all these challenges. And I think sometimes we were lucky we got to communicate with our team and really talk through some of those. And sometimes you knew people were struggling in their own way or silently. And we just tried to create an atmosphere of empathy and open ears to support people the best we could. So this is my people comment about, I really think that we try to focus on how do we support our teams and our people. And then the processes and business part are also there too. Again, we're in a fortunate situation and I hope the team feels that way. And I really want to thank everyone for the work that they've done over the last 18 months, remote and also coming in periodically throughout those 18 months and stepping into work. Okay, so Mike, did you want to say anything there?
Yeah, basically I'll just follow up.
Yep,
I think that, for us, I think I love working with you and I love what the Getty did because I'm a people manager also. And I find the staff to be incredibly important. I think it's really important that we meet the needs of the staff. And I also want to send out a thank you just because we could have never gotten all the work we've done during this period without incredible dedication. Incredible dedication from the staff and a willingness to really work through difficult situations. So same as you, I just really appreciate the staff and all the work that they did.
Perfect, thank you. So now we'll jump into the kind of what did we do, right? So we talked about kind of these values and the things that we are interested kind of as managers and leaders in the department. But there are some things that we concretely moved forward on, and we're excited to share those with you. I'm gonna let Mike kind of take over some of the talk here and I'll chip in with thoughts and we'll just have a kind of back and forth conversation. Obviously, the first thing that we did was we shifted to remote work, right? So 18 months ago, at the onset of the pandemic, we all went home. It was basically all non-essential employees were asked to stay home. Imaging fell into this like somewhat essential at times, but largely wasn't deemed that we had to be there to care for the art unless it was a conservation project that was moving through or something else. I'm sure maybe Mike will touch on those too. But that's the first thing. And Mike, I'll let you kind of take from here and I'll chip in along the way.
Sounds great. Okay, so basically we had to shift to remote work. I think one of the things I do want to mention, I'm going to be kind of going through these different bullet points, but a lot of these actually kind of happen simultaneously. So first of all, what I'm going to do is talk about shifting to remote work. I think that I kind of became aware what was going on with the pandemic and realized we may have to work from home. So basically I started to look at what are we going to be able to work on that we don't have to be on site to do. And at the same time, I also reached out to Tani Cracchiola, who is our manager at the Villa, and talked to her. And she kind of had the same concept. So she started basically with her staff at the Villa working on the current projects and preparing them to be moved off site, getting things onto drives, starting to look at the computer situation. I was doing the same thing with my staff at the center, basically what could we get that we could start working on immediately as soon as we get home? I think the biggest challenge was computers. And I have to say again, with the staff, I really appreciate what they're willing to do. We had some staff working on their own computers at home, some staff taking home computers. We took home some of the desktops. We did everything we could to make sure everybody had equipment at home. Then we had to look at the projects. And so basically, I knew we had some work for a few weeks and maybe for a month or so, but I looked at long-term projects. So I started to look at what are the things I really want to accomplish that we never have time for. And one of the big things for us is we have a huge image database that goes back to, over 30 years of imaging, a lot of different media, and a lot of it has never been looked at and cleaned up. And a lot of it for that reason has not been available online. So basically I started to put together a project for us to do that work and started to put together the documentation, working with other members of the team to figure out how we would go about this process. And so that became the work that we were going to do. And so that gave me something to really give the staff that could keep us busy for a very long time. I don't think any of us knew how long this was going to be. So I was very fortunate that we had something like this, but we're not finished with this. This is a project that we are going to continue in the background as we move through the work we need to do as we return to site. So I don't know if you have any more, Todd, about switching to the remote.
Yeah, I would just say, the technology ad I think was important, right? So our department, I think, moved pretty quickly to make sure everyone had laptops and the equipment they needed to do work at home. I can say that I went through with like bolt cutters in the vaults to cut out our some of the laptop or the desktops that were tethered down before we had the laptops. So it was a bit of a mad scramble on the way out, and then we kind of slowly got technology out. I would say that another kind of key piece to this is that we switched over to voice over IP on our phone system, which isn't necessarily like a fan favorite here at Getty, but what it did was it cut off the kind of tethered in landlines and gave people kind of phone access over Wi-Fi. So then they can put their desk phone on an app, either on their laptop or their desktop at home. And that allowed us to also kind of further work from home and take work calls that would otherwise go to your office at home. And I think, again, it's a bit of a mixed bag here about reviews about that, but I think it was an important piece of technology that we offered up. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I see training and resources, and I'm sure you'll probably talk about that, but I think the opportunity, I guess I'll go to the next slide and we can talk about that type of stuff as we go on. You ready for the next one?
Actually, we can stay here for right now.
Okay, cool.
Elaborate on a couple of things. I want to talk a little bit about training. I mean, one of the things that happened is basically with our staff, we have staff that's focused in different areas. And so a lot of our staff is heavily focused on photography. Some of our staff is heavily focused on post-processing. All the work we needed to switch over to was post-processing, and some of it was complex, fixing up these old images and these old files from very different medias. So we did training sessions on Zoom where the technicians talked to photographers more about post-processing, and so we had these conversations which brought the team together, which was awesome. Along with that, it gave everybody a little bit more knowledge and the ability to use their tools better. It really expanded the skill sets of our department and allowed us to work through these projects. And so it served two purposes. One is that I found it very important as we moved off-site to really increase communication, to really increase the communication and get everybody together, because we didn't have that on site where we saw each other. And the training sessions were another chance for us to all get together and talk. So it was very important. And so I think that the training became a big part of what we needed to do. We also suggested that people use time for training. If they didn't, when they didn't have work, learn, train, go online and use your time. And so, I think the training was a big, important part of what we did and something that really improved our department. And everybody came back with stronger skill sets and the ability to do more work. And the next point there is the supportive and flexible environment, which that was super important. I think that one of the biggest things we did is we allowed people flexibility. Working at home, we allowed them the flexibility to do what they needed to do, to take care of their families, to do the things that were necessary, because that came first. And that was really important that people had that time. And so we really wanted to give them that ability. So we became very flexible. We didn't hold rigid to work hours especially at the beginning of the pandemic, because it was so important for people to be able to do work when they could and take care of the things they needed to. Everybody had unique situations. So it was super important that they had that time. And then being supportive. I mean, I think it was really important that we had a lot of communications. You know, I did one-on-ones with people. We were always available. And I think it was really important to have those conversations. It was really important for us. So I think that supportive and flexible environment was a huge part that helped us all. I know it helped me. It helped me get through this pandemic, and I know it helped everybody else get through, and it's helping us continuing to at this point, because I think it helped the whole department become a bit closer. And so that comes back to that regular communication. I found that communicating regularly became important. I actually started to do daily updates, every day sending an email out to everybody about what's going on. And I think that helped me, and I think it probably helped the staff too. I think that it was just good to have it, because, you know, when I was at work, I would see people every day. You know, I'd go through to talk to everybody. So I thought it kind of helped create that on-site environment, even though we weren't together. So yeah, you can move on to the next slide now, unless you have more to add, Todd.
Yeah, I was just going to mention the kind of LTE. So we had a staffing model change here, which was slightly impacted by or informed by the pandemic, and also diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion initiatives here at Getty that kind of really gained steam kind of during the pandemic. And what we were able to do is change our staffing model just through avocation for our team, and them advocating for themselves as well, is that we took limited term, these project hires essentially, you know, that had a year term or 2-year terms that would frequently kind of keep working on projects year after year, term after term, and took those and turned everyone into full-time permanent employees. And what that will allow us to do is not only, you know, probably a big sigh of relief for the team that got converted, that they feel safe in the workspace, but it allows us to use our staff in ways that we haven't fully realized yet, but it takes them off necessarily specific projects. They still support that work that they were hired to do, but it in a way frees us up to be a little more creative and agile in the way that we use our teams, and especially support the team's interest. If a technician wants to learn more about object photography, or someone wants to learn more about, you know, photogrammetry or something else, we can better facilitate that now because of that change. And I think that was a big win for us too, in a time of a lot of stress. Okay, so what are we working towards? So those are some of the things we did. I guess these are the things that we're working towards. Again, Mike, I'll let you kind of lead this one, and I'll jump in here and there if you feel good with that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool.
I think that basically the biggest thing that we're heading towards is a hybrid work environment. We did find that staff was incredibly efficient at home. You know, we have a situation in Los Angeles where commutes can be really bad and take a lot of time for people to get to work, spending hours on the road a day. And we found that when people are home, they're able to have breakfast and go right to work. They're just more efficient. And so we started to look at how we could create kind of a hybrid work environment, which is also going to bleed into the next subject that I'm going to talk about, the studio space efficiency. But basically with that environment, what we're doing is photographers can come in, they can photograph, work through what they need to do on site, and they can go home and process at home. And technicians can do both on site and at home, working through files. Right now, kind of, I would say the average for our department, we work 9 days every 2 weeks. We're working about 5 on site, 4 at home. Is kind of the average of what we're doing. It varies for all the staff. But one of the things that's allowing us to do is use space more efficiently. Down the road, what I'm really envisioning more is currently a lot of times our photographers have been tied to spaces. And so they photograph in that space, they process in that space. But that means that while they're processing, we can't use that studio. And so if they go home to process, another photographer can jump in and use that space. And this is becoming especially important as we move to new technologies. We have to work with other departments. We're beginning to share our spaces regularly with scientists, with conservators. So it's enabling us to use our spaces more efficiently and allow also people to work at home, which makes everybody very happy. I mean, if you know, when you're on the road a few hours a day and you don't have to be every day of the week, it's a huge, huge plus. So I'm finding that basically working towards a hybrid environment is helping us in a lot of ways become more efficient. I think right now we're really trying to find that efficiency. You know, we've really only been back on site now for about 3 months or so. So we're really kind of finding what that efficiency is and exactly how much time that will be. but that's what we're working towards, is to create a hybrid environment that can make us more efficient and give people more balanced lives and not have to have so much time commuting. And and part of that also becomes to creating safe and productive workspaces, both at home and on site. And that's another thing that we're working towards, seeing what we need, what we can do to make that happen, to make sure that people are comfortable at home and at work, and that they have a very similar environment. And so it's an easy transition. I think right now we're dealing with that transition back to work. We became so efficient at home, we were actually totally inefficient when we got back on site. It took a long time for everybody to get used to working in the studios again. And I think, they were so efficient at home, it took a while to get efficient at work. And I think we're still kind of working towards that and that balance, and which also plays into the technology to support this, the proper communication, being able to meet when some sites, some staff is on site, some staff is at home, some can be in person, some cannot. So it's kind of learning to basically use technology to support that. And then also training, like in studio, out of studio, coming up with ways that we can have photographers meet through Zoom, but really learn how to photograph and see the space and how that works. So we're working on, getting technologies that will allow us to communicate better and basically take advantage of all of that so that we can all learn and keep moving forward. So if you want to add some things, Todd?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, no, you summed it up. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We'll go to the next slide. So what worked well? This is the what worked well and what didn't section. Again, Mike, I'll let you take this, but we're on Zoom right now. Everyone's on Zoom. I think we've all been on Zoom for the last 18 months straight. It feels like it can get a little overwhelming, certainly at times, but it is a very valuable tool. And whatever your platform is, Zoom or Teams or whatever it is, it seemed clunky at first. It's something I know that I personally, I should say, never used at Getty before pandemic, even though it was kind of one of our offerings. But now it seems like, well, I can't imagine not using it. We're still not really having big in-person meetings without masks on. So Zoom is still kind of a primary way to bring people together. And it's really been a great tool for the team, even setting up, just opportunities for the team to meet outside of, a strict meeting. So it's a great collaboration tool, despite, I'm sure everyone feels fatigued and worn out by online meetings.
Yeah, I'll second what you said, Todd, based on Zoom meetings. I think that we didn't really use Zoom before the pandemic, and we've really realized what a great tool it is. It does have its drawbacks, and we'll get into that with what didn't work well as we talk more. Each of these points is going to kind of have positives and negatives, although in the end, I think almost everything has a much stronger positive than it does a negative. So the Zoom meetings were vital to us because it was how we met and how we talked to each other. And it was a way to see each other and a way to communicate. And so they were super important. And those Zoom meetings became training sessions. I talked a little bit about that earlier, but the training sessions were an incredible opportunity for us. And I think one of the big things that happened with Zoom meetings and the training sessions is our staff is at two different sites, at the Villa and at the center, and they never really see each other. And during this time, they saw each other more than ever. And it really helped the department get to know each other, get to work together, and really learn from each other. And the training sessions became vital because we were sharing each other's expertise. And it was really important to learn and to work with each other. And everybody became better because of that. And basically also along with that, we did sessions where we reviewed work. And this was a way that we could really look at things and become more consistent and learn from each other, because we're really trying to create consistency in our work and create standards. And this was a way that we could really look at that and do comparisons and talk to each other and learn from each other. So that was important also. And on top of that, we were doing a social hour. And I think this was nice because this was a chance to get away from work, to not have to talk about work, just to talk. And this was not mandatory that you came if you wanted, you could come and go. But this really was a fun time. It was a time where people could get away, see each other, and it became very important. And one of the other things we did with Zoom that I found to be really, really important also was we did a show and tell with having everybody kind of show what they did. And they would pick something that they really loved working on. And that became, I think, a really incredible thing, because I don't think everyone in the department was aware of what each other was doing. And to see some of this work and the expertise required to do it and see some of these incredible results, it really helped kind of everybody believe in each other more and get excited about the work we're doing. So I think that was extremely good too. And so we basically used Zoom in a lot of different ways, but we found that it really did increase basically, I think, the positive attitude of everybody, and it helped everybody deal with what was going on. I mean, sometimes, we've changed meetings. And we were going to have a meeting on January 6th, so that meeting changed. It changed a lot, and focus went away from work. But it was still important. It was a time where people could kind of reflect and kind of, get away from things a bit too. So, I think that, we found Zoom to be incredibly valuable, and now we can move forward using it more. But it all comes down to communication. That's what became super important. Regular communication, being there for each other in whatever capacity was necessary to deal with what was happening at the time. And so that, I think that those things did work really well for us.
Cool. How are we on time, Mike? I can't see my chat.
We got a couple minutes. We've got a few minutes.
All right.
About
okay,
3
cool.
minutes.
Okay, then we'll zoom through these next couple. Zoom. So the what didn't work well section, I can quickly knock a couple things off here. Home internet upload speeds and download speeds didn't work well. When we're dealing with huge files and massive projects, that was a big blocker for us. So even though we could do the work at home, a lot of times it took us forever to kind of move that data without coming on site. We have a really robust network here at our Getty campuses, and not so much at home. So what else? Challenge for new staff. So we do have newer team members that came on, shortly before the onset of the pandemic. And I think it was difficult for people to get to a sense of like what Getty is, what the department is, who their colleagues are. And they've worked in that capacity, far more than they did on site with people. And that's just a challenge I don't think we've solved, but, bringing people together on Zoom helps with that. I know there were a lot of software issues. Come back in, you turn your desktop on, and there's 18 months of patches and things that go in that's still causing a lot of headaches for us. That didn't work so well, but we're still trying to work through that. I don't know, Mike, what do you have for a not work well?
Yeah, I would say basically just a lot of the things you just said. We all experienced all of those issues. Software, home internet. Home internet was a big one for us, and so when we could get on site some, we could actually start uploading some things. That was a huge plus. I would say the other things were, some people had a hard time adjusting to Zoom, and some people don't always express themselves well in Zoom. And so Zoom didn't work as well for some staff as it did for others. And so there were some limitations there and time getting used to all of that. And then there's also things, occasionally around a little hiccups, like things where we review work, and sometimes that can get a little touchy for some people, or, because criticism and talking and subjectivity. And so little things like that. I think that with all of it, though, again, everything was more positive than negative. But there's just things to be aware of as you move through these processes, that you are going to have challenges. Things are going to come up where you have to deal with certain situations and move through those. And so, all in all, for me, I think the biggest issues were things like home internet. It was tech stuff. It was tech things that became the biggest issue most of the time, because all the personnel stuff we moved through. And I think the other thing for staff that I have to say is that, I appreciate everybody's patience as we work through all this. Again, everybody just had such great attitudes through this whole thing, and that really made it all work. So, but again, these were some challenges, definitely.
Absolutely. All right, so takeaways, the takeaway section. Pete's coming in. How are we doing? Are we out of time?
We're gonna push into our
fine.
Q&A a little bit, but please, just
all right. So we'll just wrap it up. Thanks.
Just want to give
we'll wrap up on takeaways. So I think again, I guess it's hard to have a real conversation, free-flowing conversation on Zoom. I think that's our goal, was talking about these points and discussing amongst each other. Obviously, we've prepared for the talk, so we knew what we were going to talk about. But I do want to encourage the community to either reach out to us individually or as a department if you have questions, if you want to collaborate on anything, suggestions for things that you found at work. I think it really is important to kind of, I want to respect that spirit of the roundtable. We're here kind of as a community with, a really, really deep breadth of knowledge and expertise in all aspects of imaging and digitization and cultural heritage. We certainly don't know everything. I think we implemented things we felt worked well. I think we shared some things that didn't work well, but I would love to hear from others on what they found was successful for them. And especially if there's areas of development that we want to, I don't know, maybe we can figure out how to work on something or how to approach certain challenges together as a community. I'm all for that. Again, I want to thank the team kind of for working through all of this. I hope you all as a community found this somewhat helpful to get some insight to the things that we worked through. And while they're not prescriptive solutions on, here's how to solve this particular problem, or here's how to deal with COVID in the workplace, I hope you're able to glean some positive aspects from that you may be able to apply in your own space. Mike, any last parting words before we turn it over to Q&A?
I'm just kind of agreeing with you. I think the biggest thing is takeaways for me is just we learned a lot about how we can use technology better. I don't think any of us thought we could ever work from home, and we were able to work from home. We actually got as much imaging done in that year as we did when we were on site. It was just a different type of imaging, but we were actually able to keep up the workflow. And again, just the biggest thing is I think the most important thing through all of this is the people focus. And I think that's what really made it all work too. It's being focused on the people and their needs. And that's my biggest takeaway is I think that if anything, I think this pandemic helped bring the department closer together. And I think that was valuable.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. All right, we'll end. Thanks, Peter, for giving us a little extra time there.
That's great, guys. You have to show your last slide. It's just an awesome slide.
This is Tani's photograph, I believe. I took it off our site. So yeah, a lot of these images that we use were pulled from our photographers, and they're all pretty much Getty images. So yeah.
I mean,
sorry, the last slide. Sorry, yes, the last slide. I didn't even get to the last slide. Here we go. This one we didn't take. This was a communications department, but it's a cool image. Yeah, I
do like it quite a bit too, and I have to say I really appreciate you both spending time to do this, and the human element that we're all dealing with here is truly impactful on all of us, and I think it's a very important conversation to keep having. I know it's affected our business at DT as well, and I'm sure everyone else is. It's good to have a conversation about that stuff. So let me jump into some questions.
You want me to stop sharing or just leave this up?
You can leave it up. It's totally fine.
Okay. Sounds good.
When we're done with Q&A, I'll ask you to kind of pull it off.
Sure.
Put an intro slide up. We have a question from R. Baldwin. When did you go back on site? And I have a feeling this is one of those stage questions of partial to, full staff and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's probably there's probably many answers to this. Getty officially opened back up to full operations is the term they used, September 7th. Full operations means that if you can do your job and it's full capacity from home, you can keep working from home. If you need to come on site to touch the art or the cameras, then we need to come back on site to do that. And that we don't get to use this pay code time, which is OHP, this other hours paid, which was a designation for I'm at home, I'm not allowed to come on site, and I actually can't be productive in the moment. So that went away. So the expectation was that we are going to work to full capacity, either on site or at home. That was September 7th. But Mike probably had team coming in a lot more than others, and that was months and months.
Yeah,
right?
we were actually kind of coming in the whole time, sporadically when needed. So because there were people working at the Getty the whole time, and so we would come as needed to complete projects. So we started to come on site sooner, kind of a staff at a time, whoever needed to go in. I was coming in frequently just to basically process some things for people, make some prints, do some things that publication needed, a few different things. And so we did have staff coming on site. We were coming on kind of regularly, starting probably back to June, with some staff, a few a week here and there, working towards September, kind of increasing that through July and August, and then basically being ready in September. So I would say June is kind of when things started to ramp up a little bit, and we were coming on site some, and then it ramped up to September to go more to full strength. And now we're working in hybrid, like I mentioned, about 5 days every 2 weeks.
And I'll designate that like all that work was deemed essential, either time sensitive, or the art was being returned to the loaning institution and it needed imaging, or for publication, something that had a time-based element to it that we couldn't just say, can this wait until whenever we're back? Yeah.
Makes sense. So we have a bunch of questions about your hybrid working model. I have one too, but I might wait for the breakout room So I don't
I
take
hope I
up.
have answers. Yeah, great. Let's hear 'em.
One question is about the hybrid model and processing images remotely. What type of workflow storage systems did you use?
Process imaging remotely. Well, I'll let Mike chip in too, because he manages the studio directly. But obviously, we're working off our MacBook Pros with external storage, and then typically using that external storage to kind of transfer media from on-site to off-site and back to on-site for upload.
Mhm.
And then the standard tool set, of course, Capture Ones and Photoshops and things like that to do the technical, like the processing of files, and then the uploading of that content once we're back on site. And generally, that's the way it works because, and again, I'll give Mike a chance here. But if let's say like a mass digitization project may have thousands of images in it, you can do that processing, cropping, whatever from home, and process out to that external. But then once you're back on site, that's when we're uploading that content for deposit into systems, because it just wasn't feasible again with the home internet situation. We're not running fiber to everyone's house. It's kind of using the existing home internet. I don't know, Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, basically, we were using remote drives. We got everybody remote drives, but along with that, we were using different things from Google Drive to different ways of transferring files back and forth to each other. And the Getty has some systems, and we actually have access to the Getty servers. That didn't happen immediately, but we did get access to all the Getty servers, so we could move things. It was just slow, but we did find we could move smaller files. And so a lot of times we would basically work at home, and we would actually be processing access files. They would actually be going onto servers. And then my wife is actually the one that then moves those to the next system. So she was actually uploading stuff. So she was able to do those smaller access files and get those available so they could get online. And then archive files, we would wait till we were on site to upload those because of the amount of time it would take. Some people were doing them from home depending on their speeds, but there's a lot of challenges to moving large files. So most of it we would basically work on at home on a remote drive and then do more of the uploading when we are on site.
Yeah, and I would say for collaboration stuff, Mike's right. There's, we did use OneDrive, Google Docs, and things like that, right? So a bit of a mixed bag, across Getty, but I know I utilize OneDrive quite a bit for smaller collaboration and file sharing. Even Slack seemed to work well for file sharing stuff.
So we have another question that's related to this as well, but this is from Jennifer. When working from home, were people remoting in, like remote desktop? It sounds like you weren't doing that. I guess the question would be like, why didn't that work?
We weren't allowed
in.
Sorry, remote in. We weren't actually allowed to remote in for security reasons. There's a lot of security in our computers and the way things work, and we weren't allowed to do the remote in process. That's the only people allowed to do that are the technicians. So we weren't allowed to work that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess we're just talking about leveraging heavier processing power. I would imagine the remote in. Yeah,
we wanted to do that. Yeah, we did want to do that. My wife wanted to do that because she wanted to move archive files, so she wanted to remote into her computer at work, but she wasn't allowed to do it for security reasons.
Yeah, but as far as like monitoring work, I don't know if there was an element of that question. Like, do you need to like log in to a thing? That wasn't something we were requiring. But anyway, if that was part of the question.
We have a question from Tabby. What was the decision behind? What was behind the decision to close the Internet Archive remote scanning site?
The Internet Archive is a contractor that we use to support our portal book digitization. And the decision was based around COVID protocols and safety protocols and who we were allowing on campus. So our staff had to go home during that time and couldn't work in their primary space, as well as the Internet Archive contractors. I believe they brought some of that team back now, but I should just note that they're distinct from Getty employees, even though they work on Getty with that material. So if you are an Internet Archive contractor, question asker, and you went home, really those decisions were based on county and state guidelines and overall mandates that the Getty put in place about who could be in the workspace. So we all had to vacate.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Well, we're kind of just going past our Q&A. I'm going to ask everyone to save the rest of the questions for you both for the breakouts.